Hello and welcome back to the Shutter Sports Refresh. This is the weekly show that gives you all of the biggest sports news from the past week. If this is your first time listening to the show and you joined us because of the recent ad that got posted on Shutter Sports Media, our writer Lucky Roberts would like to know that ad was entirely my idea. I've got to say, I think Lucky did some fantastic acting, so definitely check that ad out if you haven't seen it yet. Anyways, that's enough talking. Let's get right into this week's sports news, starting off with March Madness. This year's March Madness tournament has had basically no upsets. We've reached the Final Four now, and the only Cinderella-esque team was eliminated by Texas Tech in the Sweet 16. That was, of course, Arkansas. To get to that Sweet 16 spot, though, Arkansas ended up taking down Kansas in the first round, and then number 2 seed St. John's in the second round, both fantastic games. Speaking of St. John's, by the way, they were the only number 1 or 2 seed in this tournament to not make it to the Elite 8. That's how good the number 1 and 2 seeds were this tournament. Anyways, getting back to this Texas Tech and Arkansas game, Arkansas found themselves up 10 with 10 minutes left in the game, and it looked like they had it in the bag. Texas Tech was a 3 seed though, and they didn't want to go down without a fight. They ended up climbing back into the game, and Darian Williams hit a 3 to send the game to overtime. And in overtime, again, it was Darian Williams with a post hook over 2 defenders to seal the game for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And so we had a pretty boring Elite 8 with a bunch of high seeds. The Sweet 16, although it was full of high seeds as well, had some close games though, so I'll break those down now. The first one was a basket off an inbounds pass by Milos Uzen for Houston. They ended up taking down Purdue and going to the Elite 8. And the other close one was a 73-70 matchup between Michigan State and Ole Miss. Michigan State ended up taking the win thanks to their great defense. And over the weekend, the Elite 8 also went down as we got into the Final Four now for next weekend. I hyped up Texas Tech earlier with their big win over Arkansas, but they ended up losing in the Elite 8 to Florida thanks to Walter Clayton Jr. scoring 30. Another game in the Elite 8 was Duke against Alabama. Alabama, of course, in the Final Four last year, but they didn't make it this year as Duke, who is looking like an NBA squad this year, ended up dismantling Alabama, winning the game by 20. And the aforementioned Houston didn't want to win on a game winner 2 games in a row. They completely dismantled Tennessee, heading to the Final Four as well. And the last team in the Final Four is another 1 seed, Auburn. They ended up taking down Michigan State. That means the Final Four is now all 4 number 1 seeds: Auburn, Florida, Duke, and Houston. Let's not forget about the women's bracket though, as they're also in the Final Four after their games finish up tonight. And funnily enough, all 4 number 1 seeds have a chance of making it to the Final Four in the women's side as well. It all comes down to a game between UConn and USC, which is going down right now. If UConn wins, they're the number 2 seed, so all 4 number 1s won't make it. So again, stay tuned for next weekend, not only for the men's bracket, but for the women's bracket in the Final Four of March Madness. Let's move over to the MLB now, where the regular season has started and there's already cheating scandals being accused of the New York Yankees. They have these new bats, which are nicknamed torpedo bats, and essentially have more mass at the end of them, allowing for bigger hits and more home runs. While nobody knows if these bats are legal yet, what we do know is that the Yankees are taking advantage of it. They swept the Milwaukee Brewers over the weekend, and during that time scored 32 runs and 13 home runs. That is ridiculous. The other 3 undefeated teams in the MLB now are the LA Dodgers, San Diego Padres, and St. Louis Cardinals. We'll keep you posted on the refresh in the next following weeks if any of these teams end up getting defeated or if these new bats end up getting banned. Let's move back into basketball now to the NBA, where there's just a week left until the playoffs. Here is every team that's already clinched a playoff spot. The Cleveland Cavaliers and Oklahoma City Thunder have both reached the 60-win mark and are definitely clinched into the playoffs. The Boston Celtics and New York Knicks are also not far off. The other good teams in the Eastern Conference are the Indiana Pacers, Detroit Pistons, and Milwaukee Bucks. They're just ahead of the play-in spots. Those 3 teams are looking to clinch their playoff spot later this week. In the West, though, things are a bit more complicated as every team is close together in record. Other than the Thunder, the teams we know that are surely in are the Houston Rockets and Denver Nuggets. And then we have the giant mass of the Los Angeles Lakers, Memphis Grizzlies, Golden State Warriors, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Los Angeles Clippers, who are all within 3 games of each other. The Dallas Mavericks, Sacramento Kings, and Phoenix Suns are all also in contention for those final 2 playoff spots. Like I said, the playoffs are starting very, very soon, so stay tuned in the coming weeks and we'll let you know the brackets for the playoffs and how the games end up going. And speaking of the playoffs, the NHL is getting into their playoff time as well. Let's take a look at the standings. In the Eastern Conference, the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning have surpassed the defending champion Florida Panthers for the number 1 and 2 spots in the Atlantic Division. In the Metropolitan Division, the Washington Capitals have already clinched the win with 103 points. The Carolina Hurricanes are in second with 94, and the injured New Jersey Devils are in third with 85. For the wildcard spots in the Eastern Conference, the Ottawa Senators are 7 points clear of grabbing the first spot. But those final 8 to 10 games will be essential for one of the Montreal Canadiens, New York Rangers, Columbus Blue Jackets, Detroit Red Wings, or New York Islanders to take one of those last spots. Moving into the Western Conference now, each playoff spot seems to be filled barring a total collapse of some sort. In the West now, the Central Division has the Winnipeg Jets and Dallas Stars, both above 100 points, and the Colorado Avalanche are at 93. In the Pacific Division, the Vegas Golden Knights have 98 points, and the Los Angeles Kings and Edmonton Oilers are around the 90-point marks as well. That means the wildcard spots in the West are open for the Minnesota Wild and St. Louis Blues, who have 87 points each. And for our last piece of news this week, let's end off with some soccer. The Champions League playoffs resume on April 8th, so stay tuned next week for the news on that. And that's it for this week's episode of the Shutter Sports Refresh. I've been your host, Finn Noel. I hope you had a good time watching today and that you learned something along the way. You can check me out on social media right down here. And same thing goes for the writer for this episode, Lucky Roberts, and of course, Shutter Sports Media. Thanks for watching.